Good afternoon or good morning, whenever it is that you are listening to this video. It is week 13. What in the world? Today we are going to take a look at chapters 5 and 6, some examples of those strategies, and you will pause and post as usual. And then we're going to circle back around, haha, no pun intended, to lit circles and look at how our Goodreads project kind of intersects with that. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's due. So, without further ado, man, I'm just full of them today. Let's move to chapters 5 and 6. Pick just one. Which strategy do you like best and why? Go ahead and pause and post at the Padlet where we have been pausing and posting the last few weeks. And again, just one from 5 or 6. So I will let you pause and post. And be sure to look at your classmates' posts as well. You can like them. Hit like. Okay, welcome back from pausing and posting. Let's see if any of your favorites are like mine. Chapter 5, Inquire and Explore. I had a few favorites from chapter 5. One of them is burning questions. I just feel like students very, very infrequently get a chance to look up. They're like, school should be a chance where they get to pursue and find answers to the things that they want to know. And so often we don't. And so if you were going to do this with students, you would, of course, write with them and model with them. You'd list some burning questions you have. You could even have them go back to their 6 purposes chart if you wanted to, and then ask them to focus on the questions that pop into their head and write them down without editing. And these should be questions for which you genuinely love to discover answers. So here are some of mine. Why am I afraid of birds? Does birth order really matter? If so, how much? What could have been done differently to alleviate the impact of this current crisis that we're in with COVID? And then one that's really been on my mind lately is, do students learn as much in online classes as they do in face-to-face classes? You're going to find this blank burning questions template in the slides that are posted. So it's something that you might want to print out and put in your IMB just so you remember it. But I, trying to go through this process, I pursued this question and I thought about what I thought I would find out. Probably not. That's what I think. But I think teaching techniques still matter no matter the setting. The interaction is necessary no matter the setting. And that a chance for questions and answers are important no matter the setting. I think I'm going to find that it's hard to strike the balance between accountability and busy work. That blended is better than all online, and that students, I would want them think I'm going to see about student feelings and performance. And what I found was I actually went and looked this up. And my first Google search was all stuff from tech companies and e-learning platforms. And they're like, students learn way more. And they, showed all these statistics and stuff that were from very, very specific settings, like in a business classroom or like an online university. Things like that. And so there was no comparison, but it was more just self-reporting. When I examined the scholarly resources, I found a lot of self-reporting as well. I've got one that I posted that kind of summed up what I found, but I found that blended, a combination is better than online for grad. Undergrads still prefer face-to-face. This can be alleviated by synchronous interaction. So actually what I found right here was true. Blended is still better than online. There's a lot more I'd like to explore to find out. But this was a lot of self-reporting as well. So I would, if I had time, and if this were an assignment in a classroom, then I would try to find out, are there any studies that show that? Instead of like reporting on student performance, not just student self-perceptions or self-reporting about whether they think it's hard or easy or whatever. But anyway, you guys have influenced my thinking lately, and that is what I discovered. And that you can read the study that I cited for the most part right here, which will show up on the slides, even though it's not showing up here. So that's something that you can do with your kids. Like, wow, you could take a whole lot of time, but again, you want to write with them. And I would have started off with this part before, and then they would do this part, and then I would show them this is what I found, and then help them, evaluate sources and figure out what's reputable and what's not. So important these days. Looking for .coms and .edus, and really trying to steer away from sources that are really just self-aggrandizing. It's in their best interest to say something happens. So that's, I think, a combination of things would be really cool to spend some time on in a middle school classroom. Other chapter 5 favorites for me, where did blank come from? I'd like to know about. This is disturbing. What the future holds. Idiom exploration. I love these, like looking up it's cut and dried, actually. Both are adjectives. It's both cut and dried, not cut and dry. But past tense. You let the cat out of the bag, break a leg, nip it in the bud, and bite the bullet. So I've actually looked those up and found out what they are actually, what they mean, where they came from. Burning questions we already talked about. And then 3 looks, I thought, or 3 reads is really cool. This is something that I think I talked about with the Peace Dove. This is the strategy that I talked about with the Peace Dove in my discussion post on Goodreads. But the other side, I'm going to have you look at it in a minute. This is what I do. Like, have you look at it for 10 seconds if we were in class, and then write down, then like turn it back over and write down what you saw. And now I'm going to have to, and show, I can show you that. Okay, so I would give half of you this picture and give you like, look at it, study it, and then turn it back over and write down what you saw. Okay, actually, I'd give everybody this picture in this version. All right. So then I would go back. I would say, oh, geez, look at it a second time. What do you notice? So not just what do you see, but what do you notice? And nobody's talking during this. You're doing this in groups, but nobody's talking. What do you notice? And then you would individually look back at this picture and say, what do you notice? That means like really looking more closely. And then we would finish by saying, okay, what do you predict? Why does this keep happening? What do you predict based on what you saw and what you noticed? And I'd let you talk for this one. What do you predict? And look at this again. And then maybe you noticed that the mannequins are even looking at the shot. Maybe you noticed somebody looking out the window here. Maybe you saw this manhole. Maybe you noticed that hotel is spelled weird. You saw that this man looks startled. And then I would say, okay, what do you predict? And then we would see if your predictions hold up. This is the other side. It's actually a movie set. And the shot was they're filming the thing. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. The book is called The Other Side by Istvan Banyai. It's in our class set. I think it's really good for perspective. If you're looking for something for media, you can use it. Like I said, Istvan Banyai, The Other Side. And here's another example from the book. You can do the same thing. What do you see? What do you notice? What do you predict? You might predict that this guy is a strict disciplinarian. And then when we saw the other side, you might realize that it's just chaos in there and not so much. So that is 3 looks. Now, after I did that with something visual, I could do the same thing with first look at the words of this poem, then see if you can write down what you think the meaning is. And then the third one, talk together and make some predictions. And I would save the second column. I'll show you. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into the poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. And that's where I would stop with the look and the meaning. And then I would say, predict what the poet's conclusion might be. And here's the conclusion. But all I want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So just taking he wants you to enjoy the poem, to water ski across the surface. And he's like, all they want to do is like torture people with it. So that would be a way, after they've done it with the pictures, to do the same thing. And I don't know if this is the way he does it in the book with the words and meaning and then predict, but I use this with some kids at Emma Lazarus High School, the school in New York City that I work with for immigrant students, and that went really well with them. Okay, so that was chapter 5. Maybe you liked some of these. Maybe you want to stop and do one of these on the even side of your INB where there's a blank space right now. So I would say pick one and do it. But if you know you love one in chapter 6 and you'd rather do that, then you can hang on. We'll look at chapter 6 next, which is analyze and interpret. I liked the Jump the Shark. That's like when we read that children's book together, the baby lit book about Pride and Prejudice. And they were really good until they got to 6 horses and then it fell apart. That's the Jump the Shark. Imagine if, like this one. And then you would have to then explain your choice. I also like who is to blame and why do blank behave that way. So here's imagine if. I know you saw this in your text. So imagine if Augie were a captain. Which captain would he be? Imagine, oh goodness, what was the protagonist of The Hate U Give? Is it Angie is the author? Star. Imagine Star needed an ideal roommate. Who would he or she choose? We'd probably have some different choices there. Okay, who is to blame? That whole casting about. What I love about each of these is that I would want students to do this with themselves first. Imagine if I were a captain. Which captain would I be? I would probably be Captain Crunch. I would want to be Captain America, but I would probably be Captain Crunch. Imagine I needed an ideal roommate. Well, we're probably going to move away from that one very quickly because of the top choice there. So who is to blame? To do that with themselves first and then do it with the character. All of these things. So cool if you can do it with yourself first and then connect it to something you're reading. So that is chapter 5 and chapter 6. Make sure you've taken some time to try out one of those. And you can do it for yourself or for a story on the even side of your INB or the thin side of your INB, the left-hand side of your INB. Try that out. So you can show us maybe one of those during your portfolio review. Okay, so your final project, reviewing our work thus far and next steps. There are these nonfiction. These are, if we had been able to stay in class, we would have had a guest speaker from the Virginia Holocaust Museum. I'm going to put a link up to all of their sources so that you'll have access to it. I think it's really important. We can't do everything though, so I'm going to try to kind of get the juices flowing by showing you some examples and hope that you'll do some more exploring on that website. You can use some things for media and stuff if you can. These are 3 nonfiction books. I Never Saw Another Butterfly. These are children's drawings and poems from a concentration camp. Salvaged Pages. These are young writers' diaries. There's a link to YouTube clips of celebrities reading those in Canvas in the module that I'll post on the Virginia Holocaust Museum. And then I'm sure you've heard of Night by Elie Wiesel. And that is more of so this is little teeny poems. These are different, separate entries, and this is a whole work by the same author. I could assign these as readiness books in lit circles if I wanted to. I could divide up my class into readiness levels and have them, and then we all could bring perceptions of the narrator back and have conversations about that. The same thing with this. These are historical fiction on the Holocaust. Number the Stars. That's at about a third or fourth grade reading level, but it's high interest. It doesn't feel like a dumbed down story. Friedrich. That's about on a typical middle school reading level, and this is a little bit higher. All of them are historical fiction about adolescents who endured the Holocaust through different ways or different means. So how could I use this in a lit circle fashion? That's what I'm going to ask you to talk about for next time. The link is in Canvas, so you can go and click on it there. But if I were answering this question, And this is what you'll answer. Review your materials on Lit Circles. That's in the Week 10 folder module. And examine the 3 novels on your Goodreads shelf. Then discuss the following. Why might these 3 novels work as choices for literature circles in your classroom? Which roles might you use and why? And what might be some topics of discussion or essential questions that all students could grapple with no matter which of the 3 books they were reading? So think about your essential questions in terms of topics of discussion. Things that you already made up might work for Lit Circles. So going back to this, if I were to use these 3 in Lit Circles class, I think I could definitely use, okay, it's not letting me click on the link because of this dumb, oh, just go. Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll do it the hard way. If we go to, oh, here they are. I probably wouldn't use the summarizer, or I would make everybody do the summarizer. And then I would have one do the discussioner, the connector. This connector would be different than usual because it really could be to the history that we've learned about. They could connect to the history. Illustrator, the travel tracer would be a great one to use with these historical fictions because the fiction selections, because we want to see where they are. And then the vocabulary and enrichment wizard. I think I could use these, possibly the literary luminary and possibly the researcher. I wouldn't have to use all of them. If I had to pick, I would use, again, everybody for the summarizer. I would probably do the connector, the travel tracer, the literary luminary for sure. And we've already done the researcher together. So I think I would go back to the vocabulary enricher or word wizard. And I would change the word, the paragraph, the definition. I would add a column that is a symbol. And that kind of pulls in that visual part that we didn't have before. So that's one way I could use it in my classroom. If not, if I didn't want to use it that way, I could instead use it with these. I don't know if you remember that we used these during All Summer in a Day, and I had made them all about Margot. But for this set of 3 texts, 3 novels, I could, instead of the ones I just showed you, I could use these 4 roles. And I could have the fortune teller, what might be the most pressing danger for the narrator right now, from what we could tell. Matchmaker, connect between the narrator's experience and what we've learned from our research on the Holocaust. Detective, capture scenes, moments, passages that best help us understand how the narrator is feeling right now. And then agree or disagree. This is a realistic portrayal of the Holocaust. And evidence to support your opinion. So I think that probably I would use these, but you could use either, just depending on what you wanted to stress, what you thought the glue was that held the books together. And then you could use these no matter what. So reminder, on Canvas, you can find those, all like the Lit Circles that I showed you, the roles, the sheets that I showed you, the cards that I just showed you. You can look for those in the Week 10 module if you need to circle back to that. But again, it's just looking at your 3 novels that you have in your Goodreads shelf and deciding what roles you would use with them and how, and discussing that with us. And I think these are all 3 good to use together because the narrator is an adolescent who's enduring the hardship of the Holocaust. So that is your assignment for your Flipgrid. That's where you're going to explain all of that good stuff, that good thinking that you've done. Finally, I think you guys are doing this is your criteria for success on Goodreads. So far, so good. I've saw a lot of discussions pop up this weekend. You're getting in there and making your text sets first, and then some of you are going back and doing the reviews later. Some of you are doing the reviews piecemeal, and some of you are doing them all at once. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting them done. Some of you asked about a mentor text earlier. I wanted to give you a specific definition of it in a source if you wanted to look at it. Writers use a mentor text to inform their own writing. Mentor text can be generated by students from previous classes, from the teacher, or author generated. And that's really what more like what we're doing here with our Goodreads site. Mentor text can serve as models for form, genre, for content or purpose, a technique like flashback or figurative language. And mentor text should not be used in a formulaic fashion. Rather, they should provide inspiration or serve as a source of emulation. Like, I want to emulate this author's voice. I want to emulate the way this author changed perspectives, but not formulaic. And you can read more about that there if you're interested. So this is where we are, chapter 12. This check. You've already read these two. You've done this now that you're into the video. So what's due for before class next week? Make sure you do your Flipgrid response on Lit Circles. Continue to work on your Goodreads site. And then Gallagher chapters 7 and 8 on pages 49 and 51. And make sure you're engaging in a writing activity yourself on the even pages. That's where we are. I feel like this was this week was a little more packed than others. And so please make sure you write down every question that's in your head right now so that we can talk about it when we meet together in a few. All right, you guys, I look forward to seeing you soon.